Is that better? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first business meeting of the 2017-2018 school year. Today is August 8th. Would you please mute your cell phones as we begin the meeting? And we're going to go ahead, and this is our call to order, and then we're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for putting up with us running a little bit late. We're actually going to do approval of the agenda. And do I have any motion to amend the agenda in any way? Rob, Director Pedersen.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to continue the dinner session topic as the last item on the agenda before adjournment.
Before agenda planning, so maybe make it 9.2 on the agenda?
That will work fine.
Okay, great. We will do that. I don't think we have to vote on that. Are we good? We do have to vote on that. Never mind. Can we get a second to David seconds? So, roll call.
Nate?
Yes.
Krista?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Scrambling.
Rob?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
After an entire summer off, our dinner session got quite crowded with all of the topics that we haven't been able to discuss the last couple of months. But thank you for being here this evening, and we don't have any recognitions this evening, so we're going to go ahead and get straight to the superintendent's report.
Okay. Well, I can tell you one thing I have not been doing is visiting schools. It's been summertime. There has been an enormous amount of work done in our facilities, by the way, this summer, which has been fun to see. And I'm sure the facilities departments will be giving you an update on that as the school year starts up. We don't have that for you yet. So I have been continuing to work with the county and city and school board of areas of interest in our cross-governmental area meeting. We've been talking about transportation issues, mental health issues, and other issues. I meet with these people, several of these people individually, myself, and then we also have a group meeting with some school board members, and those meetings continue to be productive, I think. I also had the opportunity to invite the heads of most of the large companies that we have here in this region to come meet with me. They were extremely responsive, very interested in working with us and PSD as we continue to work on how to improve how we prepare kids for their careers. And we had an intro conversation. They're very excited about continuing to partner with us, continuing to find ways that they can donate to us or provide opportunities for kids or for teachers. We're just really appreciative of how excited they are to work with us. Also met with the new Coloradoan editor, and we're looking forward to working together and talking about issues that our communities are interested in that are education related. We had, as cabinet or various parts of cabinet, we had 2 strategic planning exercises that we have done recently in the last couple months. Both of them were facilitated by OtterBox and Otter Cares, by employees donating their time and or sometimes donating it or just using some of their time to work with us and support the school district. So we had one strategic planning 2-day event with the school foundation, with the PSD Foundation, which using their StratOps process, we were amazingly efficient at moving forward with our plans together to work with the foundation. So we're excited about those plans. We have clear follow-ups that we're all working on. And then we did it again recently with the Front Range Community College leadership. and looking at post-secondary workforce, but also looking specifically at the concurrent enrollment issues with Front Range Community College and how we can improve those offerings, how we can be better coordinated, how we can be more clear about which teachers are qualified to teach. And we just did a lot of intense problem solving, and we also have clear objectives and clear plans working forward. So really grateful to all these organizations for spending so much time trying to partner with us very effectively. So that was a really productive time. Many of us recently went to our Colorado Association of School Executives Conference. It's usually held up in Breckenridge. Again, this year it was. And I just have to say that going around looking at the offerings of staff development and conference topics, PSD just was prominent. Our staff gave several of the main presentations, and the rooms were packed, and everywhere I went, people said, wow, PSD's dominating this conference this year. So, and I think that's been our history for a while. At first I thought, well, maybe nobody wanted to present and our people are just really assertive and turn in an application every time. What I found out was that they had had more applications for presentations than ever before, and we still rose to the top of the barrel. So congratulations to our administrators. We continue to be viewed as leaders in the state, no question, by our peers. So we are all busy preparing for the new school year. Our administrators are back. We had our intro day together today, and there's a lot to be done between now and the first student who shows up at the door. So everyone's very enthusiastic and very busy preparing for the first day of school. We're thankful once again to all of our community groups that work with us to do school supply drives. Danielle, is there one place a parent should look if they want to find out about supply drives? Where should we direct them?
I believe that it's on the website, and if it's not, then I'll make sure it's up this evening. But we'll have the information regarding the CSU and the Otter Cares Pack to School and School is Cool, as well as Where Realities for Children, as well as the Partnership Center, where we collect and solicit and distribute supplies through our family liaisons.
And
So
you'll make that easy to find on the front page somewhere?
I
A
will.
link?
Yes, I will make it a news story.
Okay, perfect. It's that time of year. Thank you. Staff are getting the school sites ready for the new school year. We have at least one school that's a little behind on construction schedule because of some of the surprises that happen when you open up walls. But everyone is racing to the finish line, and we have no worries that everyone will be ready in time. And school registrations are in full swing. Finance is implementing a new online fee payment system for families. That has rolled out. Parents are beginning to learn how to use that online payment. I'm sure it won't be perfect the first time out the gate, but we are encouraged so far by the responses we've had from families that it's working for them, and they've been waiting forever to be able to make all their student payments online. So we're excited about that and the impact that will have on registrations at high schools, because the long lines have usually historically been for payments. So this is now something parents can do from anywhere. Early Childhood received funding to provide full-day preschool for at-risk children this fall. So they're ramping up that program. Very excited about having funding to be able to do that. And that's my report.
Thank you. That brings us to 4.2, board member reports. I'm just going to start off by saying that we really you didn't do a formal one, did you? So we did not do a formal board report for our, what we did on our summer vacations. We're going to delay all of that until September and give you everything for August and September all at once. But once But the thing that we do want to make sure and tell you is that on Saturday, August 19th, from 10 to 11:30 a.m., we will be having our Board of Education community engagement at the Old Town Library. And I'd really just personally like to take this opportunity to invite you to come talk to us. These are really a great opportunity to come and talk with members of the Board of Education about school finance, about what we're doing on the board, about, you know, where we are with the mill and bond, about what anything is going on in the school district. We would love to talk to you because honestly, I don't know what it is, but not a lot of people come talk to us on those Saturday mornings. So let me repeat it. 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, August 19th at the Old Town Library Community Room. And just so you know, the third Saturday of the month is pretty much the day of the month that's going to be our day for doing this throughout the school year. And it'll be rotating amongst the various libraries. So those are not your only opportunities to talk to board members. You can always contact us individually, but give it a shot. Come talk to us. We'd love to hear what's on your mind about PSD and education. So thank you. Anybody else want to say anything about what they did on their summer vacation before we move on? Okay, we will wait till September. Thank you. Okay, thanks for letting me put my little ad for our community engagement out there. So 5.0 brings us to community comment. We have one person signed up, and since you were here last time, DJ, community comment is up here, and DJ Anderson. Thank you.
Hi, I'm DJ Anderson. I'm a parent, volunteer, and public education advocate. And I have two girls still here in PSD, two wild and crazy girls in middle school and high school. Along with volunteering in the district, I've had the opportunity to join some different groups throughout the state, and one of them is the Colorado Education Network, which brings together people and organizations who support public education and that are committed to finding common ground to ensuring that it is available to all. Education is the bedrock of our state, and our students deserve a vibrant public schools. Colorado's future depends on adequate, equitable investment in our public schools and students. I'm here today to ask the PSD Board of Education to vote on a resolution to support the Colorado Education Network and become members to help spread the word of the importance of public education throughout our state. We here at PSD have done a fantastic job. We have stood up multiple times at the ballot box to show that we value education here. Unfortunately, that is not the same throughout the whole state. And I think it is important that we take care of our neighbors throughout the state and find a way that our public schools can be stronger. The Colorado Education Network webpage will be updated shortly, hopefully by September, and I'd love to be able to add the Public School District Board of Education as one of the supporting organizations in the state. The second thing that I would like from you guys is the promise of Colorado is a campaign that CEN, Colorado Education Network, another acronym, yay, will be kicking off in September. And it's an opportunity to share with the public the good that public education does here in Colorado. Through its photographs, videos, and stories, the campaign will highlight the aspirations of students and demonstrate the incredible accomplishments and potential. It will also highlight the importance of a thriving public education system, ensuring the state's economic success and well-being of its citizens. I hope to find PSD students and families willing to share their stories and aspirations with the rest of Colorado. I'm planning to reach out through principals, teachers, and parent organizations, but any help that you might be able to provide would be greatly appreciated. So I hope you personally, and as a board, will join me in the network. Again, if you believe education is fundamental to our families, community, state, and economy, Colorado is not investing adequately or equitably in education in our students and want to be informed, then this is for you. You can text CEN to 94502, or for you on TV land, you can go to coloradoeducationnetwork.org And will provide you guys with a sample of a resolution that if you guys want to look at and see if you would like to come on board, that would be great. And I'd also pass out my cards for this. So I'll get those to you. Thank you.
Thanks, DJ. And it's free, by the way, to join the Colorado Education
is
Network,
free.
having joined. Also, is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak who didn't have the opportunity to sign up or didn't sign up? And I'm guessing we have a couple of students in our audience tonight. Would you guys mind just coming up and telling us who you are and what school you're with? Would that be acceptable? Thank you very much. And if there's anything you want to tell us, you can tell us that too.
I'm Jacob Wilde, and I go to Kennard Middle School.
Thank you.
I'm Jack Wilde, and I go to Kennard Middle School, and we're here with the Boy Scouts.
Thank you guys very much for joining us tonight. We always appreciate and like having students in our audience. Okay, that brings us to 6.0, the consent agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding the consent agenda? Thank you. Nate,
I move that the board approve and adopt the recommended actions for the items on the consent agenda.
may I have a second? Susan. Okay, roll call.
Nate,
Yes.
Krista,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, and that brings us to 7.0, information reports. Dr. Smizer.
Thank you. I have a brief summary about our efforts on the long-range plan recently, and so I just thought I'd give a quick update to you all and to the community about where we are. As the board's already aware, we have one community member, Mr. Sutherland, who we are involved in litigation with. He did appeal the court's last decision, which prolonged the litigation and prevented us from going to market to sell the bonds and begin construction. So now the next step will be that the case will be heard by a Colorado appellate court, and a timeline for that hearing has not been set yet. Since we cannot sell bonds and begin the construction process while litigation is pending, beginning construction on new facilities and improvements to existing facilities is likely to be delayed by yet another year. We have not made that decision final, but that is looking very much like what's going to happen. As you will recall, we are already delayed 1 year due to this litigation, and now we anticipate this delay will probably extend yet another year. So what that means is that instead of opening the new middle school, high schools in Wellington and at the Prospect site in 2020, which was the original plan, it's now likely we will not be opening those buildings until 2022. And the opening of the new Southeast Elementary School and permanent addition to Zach Elementary had already been delayed to 2019. And now with another year, we're looking at 2020 for those construction projects as well. Should it be resolved quickly? Should the litigation be resolved quickly in the next month or so? It might be possible that we could get back on our 1 year delay schedule, but it's looking unlikely as each month goes by. So we'll keep the board and the community apprised of any changes as they may happen. And there's been a question as to whether we will keep the taxes that we have collected because we're not sure if we can use them or not in the timeline that we need to be able to use them. We do not have an answer on that at this point, but I want you to know that we'll keep you apprised, and we will have to make a decision on that relatively soon as to whether what has to happen with the money that we have already collected. So we're working with our attorneys on that issue. In the meantime, we are still managing the growth in our schools the best we can. So for this coming school year now, we've placed another modular classroom outside of Wellington Middle School. If you've gone by and seen that modular has had to go in the front yard, right in the field, because all of the space around the building on the other sides is already taken with modulars. I think I am correct that this will be the year when they have more students in modulars outside their building than they have inside. So we already have 560 students enrolled at Wellington as of the 4th. That's an increase of 56 students over last year's count and an increase of 7 over the projection. So we made a healthy projection for growth in that area, and so far they're beating their projection by about 7 as of today. The principal also believes that we could go up quite a bit, possibly as high as 575 in the next couple weeks. Also, as of last week, there were over 600 students enrolled at iStone, which is an increase of 15 students over our projection, and our projection was already a projection to grow at iStone. So they're beating our projections in both of those schools. So we will continue to look at all the areas of growth in that regional growth for possible modulars for next year. And of course, that's going to have an impact on our budget as we don't have a funding source at this time for those modulars. So we'll be working out the finances of figuring out how we can continue to put temporary classrooms in place in the regions that are growing so quickly. We have begun the process of selecting an architecture firm to design the new middle school, high school buildings, and we're mirroring the selection process similar to what the state recommends. So we have begun the interview process, and we'll be bringing a recommendation. Staff will be bringing one to me, and then I'll be sharing that recommendation with you. We're anticipating sometime later this fall when we will nail down the architecture firm that we're going to work with. We are also going to be looking closely at enrollment numbers. As you know, our enrollment comes in officially on October 1, and then it takes seemingly to the community forever for the state to finalize their numbers and count halves of kindergarten kids and 3/4 of high school kids and all of the complications that they are so picky about when they're looking at how many students they're going to fund us for. Keep in mind the October 1 count is for the purpose of money. It is the way states decide how much money we get, so they're counting so carefully. But we certainly will have a good estimate as of the first week of October, how our enrollment's looking compared to our projections in the different regions of the district. And that's been one of the things that's been the most interesting over the last few years, is we're seeing such regional differences in enrollment. Some areas exploding, others flattening out, or maybe even shrinking a little bit. So that'll be interesting to see this year. So we'll be working hard on getting the best numbers we can as quickly as possible. In November, as a board, you should expect to see enrollment report from staff. I have also asked for a third-party firm to conduct an independent 5-year projection analysis to coordinate with our demographer. We have a good demographer in district, but we also know that there's statewide trends. He watches all those statewide trends too. I just feel more comfortable, and I hope he does too, to have a second opinion of yet another firm from outside the area to take a stab as well at what our projections might look like. I think that I think all demographers seem to, at least for our northern Colorado area, seem to be agreeing that although there may be dips and wobbles as the enrollment goes up, when you look long-term in the life of a new school building, for example, there's no question the numbers are up. Will be up. There is still thousands of homes being built within our district boundaries. And then I wanted to say that the delay in the construction timeline has not delayed or will not delay our work on designing the instructional programming that's going to go into these schools. And before we even started the long-range planning process, we've been talking about our secondary post-secondary workforce readiness, as we call it, preparation for students, and working on instructional programming and innovation for that age of our students. And so we haven't slowed down. We're not waiting for new buildings to continue that work. As a matter of fact, we're excited that some of the things we believe are going to be great, we can start implementing in our new high schools even before these, in our current high schools, even before these new schools are built. And that work will certainly inform our work as we are designing the new buildings and the instructional programming. So we do not feel that this has slowed us down in terms of working with our community and designing what we think our high schoolers need. The December Board of Ed meeting is where we have preliminary plans to bring back to you our best thinking at that time on innovative educational programming for secondary students. So we're targeting December Board of Ed to have a good, healthy discussion about where we're headed with that. And that's all I have.
Board members, questions? Christoph.
So last year, one of the school visits I did was Wellington Middle School, and it was somewhat shocking to see a school like that in our district, kind of, kids pouring out of every corner and literally in broom closets. And I think that actually is not even an exaggeration. There were broom closets being used. And when you indicate that we added another modular that's going in the front yard and they're losing space for athletics and who knows what else, I guess the question that comes to mind under the circumstances, do we have a plan for what happens as they continue to grow? Say 2 years from now, is there anything we're looking at to do? I don't assume we could add another modular, or are we going to? I don't know. Are there choice kids that get knocked out, or are we going to get to the point where community kids aren't going to be able to even go to that school?
Yes, Director Fevre, we're prepped for one more up there. Scott and I have been up and have visited with Dr. Duran prior to this one being set, and typically when we prep for one, we'll prep for two because it's more cost effective to do it ahead of time. So we're ready to look for another one at such point. So that's maybe not a super long-term plan, but it'll get us a little farther down the road.
And do you have information on how many choice kids are in Wellington? Because it's my impression that those are all local kids. Yeah.
And do restrooms and gymnasiums keep up with the expansion?
That's a great point. That's part of the issue. And lockers right now are becoming very difficult. We're going to get a little bit more creative with how even, it sounds as simple as, but lockers where, we have double lockers now, we have triples is what they're called. They're more like an athletic locker that we're looking at because space is being definitely challenged in the hallways.
And sorry, one last follow-up. Are there other schools that I haven't visited that are in similar straits, or is Wellington the worst case? Are we getting in these situations elsewhere as well?
I think Wellington is the worst. And Eystone is filling up quite quickly, so they're the next worried. That's fair to say, I think.
I'm sorry, Carolyn, did you have one? And then Rob.
I just had a comment, and I think we had talked about this earlier, Sandra, that they have 5 tracks for first grade out there this year, and so there are kids that are going to be coming up through that system. They were really, squeezed in out there. I don't know if anybody's ever visited out there, but the footprint that Wellington Middle School is on, I believe, is only 4 acres. So there's not a lot of room to move around and navigate out there. There's not any parking. There's nothing. It's really tight. And I agree with you, Christoph, that kids quite literally are pouring out of the closets out there. They are using every little bit of space that they have.
Rob.
So I wanted to follow up. I hear that we have room for another modular. That's fine. Given that we're now talking about not having a new school open there at the earliest until 2022, does one more modular cover the space between now and then? And if not, do we have a plan, or when will we have a plan about what to do with those kids?
We will have to bring back to you a plan for another year out after the next modular goes in. I will tell you that if you think back just a mere, maybe it's been 2 years now at the most, when we were looking at the long-range plan to start with, we said that in the interim, we could overflow the Wellington Middle School kids into Eystone. Do you remember we talked about that? And now Eystone's full. Exactly. You're right. It's not working. So the growth is here. It's fast, and it doesn't appear to be slowing down at all. So we will keep doing the best we can with that, but we'll bring you a plan for where the modulars go. The basic idea would be to put another pad out in that field and put another 2 in there. That's almost, if you look at the footprint, that's the only place they can go. Most likely that's what staff will bring you, but I'll wait for them to
So the
give
deal
you.
fundamentally is we'll just keep adding modulars until there's no more room at least on that property,
Yeah.
is what it amounts to. We don't have any alternate ideas about, okay, all right. That's really sad. And I know it's not your fault, but it's really sad.
Other board members' comments and questions? Okay, I'm just going to chime in here because you know what? Everywhere I go in PSD, I get the question, why is it that one individual can override the will of the voters who voted to approve the bond last November, narrowly, admittedly, but how is it that one individual can do this? People are frustrated. They're frustrated at the legal costs. They're frustrated at the delays. But let me tell you what else they should be frustrated about, because it's not just a matter of the legal costs. The legal costs, while unfortunately large, are also one of the smaller costs that are involved with these continued delays. We continue to experience rising interest rates, which when you talk about this kind of money, when we're going to have to be putting these bonds out on the market, are going to be a very expensive piece of this. We continue to have rising construction costs in our area. The overall, one individual who is appealing legal decisions that so far have all been in Poudre School District's favor, and I want to emphasize that every single legal decision, and I can't even count the numbers so far, have been in Poudre School District's favor. I just think that's really important for people to know. But because of these continued appeals, the costs of this one individual to our district continue to rise, and I think people just need to be aware of that. And it's not the choice of anybody up here that this is a problem. We're trying to resolve it, but we're kind of stuck, and so we hope that it'll get better. Nate, I'm sorry.
Well, I would like to say that although I am concerned about the costs and the delays, and they're real, in our system of government, anyone has the right to challenge something like this. And while I disagree on the merits, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to demonize people for using what's available. We don't demonize people for using a grievance process that's set up in our employee agreement to try to get questions answered. And even though the district has prevailed every step of the way, the reality is there's a process set up and someone has decided to use that process. And whether we agree or disagree with it, that's why those processes are there. So I disagree that it's appropriate to demonize someone even if we disagree with their decision.
Okay, well, let's move on to, I believe, 8.0, action items. So we'll move on to 8.1, monitoring policy review, EL 2.2, treatment of staff. We are doing something a little bit different this year based on some conversations the board had at our June retreat. And because all of the board members and actually the entire public can have access to the board packet prior to the board meetings, and we've all read the information in it. We thought, well, we don't really need to have a presentation on, sometimes it's largely the same material every time, but that staff would then be available for, to have questions asked of them, et cetera, or then we can approve this or not, and then we can look at a policy review. So do any board members have comments they'd like to make about the report or questions to make of staff, to ask of staff? Okay, seeing none, would anybody like to make a motion on the EL 2.2 monitoring report? Nate?
I actually do have one question that I sent an email that I'd like to just ask publicly.
Okay, Rob?
And that one of the ways that we try to gauge employee satisfaction is with the TEL survey, and we don't have the TEL survey this year because it's being overhauled, so I understand that. But one of the substitutes that we're using in the interim is the sort of separation interviews when people leave, that we ask them why they're leaving and how they feel about stuff and whatever. And one of the things in the monitoring report we got was that about 20% say they're leaving because they're dissatisfied. And I had asked the question about, do we know why they're dissatisfied? And I did get an answer in email, but I think at least it's worthwhile just talking about that publicly. So I don't know whether it's Sandra or Vicky or whoever wants to answer that, but if you could answer that question for the record, I guess. Thanks.
Vicky?
Yeah, sure. We do send out a survey request to staff who are leaving us or separating from the district for a variety of reasons. They're resigning, they're retiring, or they've been non-renewed if they're licensed employees. And about 18% that responded did say that they were leaving because they were dissatisfied with their job. As far as what we're looking at, we're trying to see if there's any patterns as far as why people are leaving. And this one kind of was all over the place. It's for salary purposes. I mean, some of the comments were that they cannot live and work in this community because it's become so expensive to live in Fort Collins. Workload was also a concern. Just challenge of the position was another reason. So there wasn't really one thing that we could point to as far as why people were leaving, but this is a good survey response that we can start managing and gauging the responses to see if they increase or decrease.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay. Nate, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the board determine that the superintendent has reasonably interpreted Board of Education policy EL 2.2 in her internal monitoring report dated August 8, 2017, and that the evidence presented supports the superintendent's conclusions stated in the internal monitoring report.
Okay, may I have a second? Susan? Any further discussion? Okay, looks like we're ready for roll call.
Nate?
Yes.
Krista?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, the other part of that action item is policy review. So my question would then be, do any board members feel that there's any need to change any parts of that policy, or are we okay where we are with that policy? 2.2. Pardon me? That's the question. Yes. Does anybody have any thoughts? Okay, I think we're good. Okay, we can move on, if everybody agrees, to 8.2. And once again, with the monitoring and policy review of EL 2.5, which is emergency, superintendent, and executive succession. So does anybody have any questions about that report? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding that report? Susan?
I move that the board determine that the superintendent has reasonably interpreted Board of Education Policy EL 2.5 in her internal monitoring report dated August 8th, 2017, and that the evidence presented supports the superintendent's conclusions stated in the internal monitoring report.
Okay, may I have a second? Rob? Any further discussion? Nate?
I just urge the superintendent to drive carefully and generally be careful.
Okay, thank you.
So noted.
Anybody else? Roll call, Kyla.
Nate?
Yes.
Krista?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, oh, and then the second part of that is policy review. Does anybody see any need to change EL 2.5? By the way, for the people out in TV land or in the audience, EL stands for executive limitation. They basically describe what the superintendent is supposed to do or should not do. Basically, we say what she should not fail to do, but she should not do, but she can do anything else to manage the district, essentially. But anyway, does anybody have any suggested changes? Okay, well, I think we are good then for the time being. So that brings us to 9.0, discussion items, and 9.1 is legislative discussion. As we have started up the new school year, our legislative committee, subcommittee met at 4 p.m. today, as we do before pretty much every board meeting. And we started to discuss a number of topics. One of the topics is really how we can do a better job of explaining within Colorado the financial constraints that the state legislature lives under in order to attempt to fund things like education and transportation and healthcare and everything else that the state government is required to do, and some of the things that they want to do. There's less flexibility every year. Our particular district continues to receive over $26 million less every year just in our school district of the funding that we believe that the voters intended when they passed Amendment 23 in the year 2000. So that continues to be of concern, whether the legislature decides to call it the negative factor or the budget stabilization factor. It really doesn't matter what they call it. The fact is that we're still incredibly underfunded. The other thing that we discussed, and I'm going to pass out a little sheet, is that we did pass our proposed legislative agenda. It could get changed again for this coming year. And what we would like to do is start meeting with both our state and federal representatives to make sure they understand what the board feels is important to advocate for us, and maybe to see if anybody would be willing to carry any bills to advocate for our legislative agenda. So I'm going to pass this down. We're sort of, in order to comply with open records or core rods, open meetings laws, thank you. I'm sorry, my brain's on vacation still, I guess. But in order to comply with open meetings laws, we're asking 2 board members to sign up to meet with each of these folks. We have 9 people on the list who are elected officials, state and federal, who are within cover PSD boundaries. So I'm just going to pass this down. I will sign up last. I'll take whoever's left over. But if anybody would like to sign up for 1, 2, 3, 4 or more, we'd love to have your help in getting out to all of our representatives. Would anybody else who's on legislative like to add to what we talked about tonight? David.
I just want to add one point on how we plug it in. I think it's a federal issue, but there is some discussion that I've seen in newspapers about messing with student loan repayment methods for college graduates, and this argues that they have to start immediately paying back their loan, and if they pay back consistently for 10 years, then there may be a forgiveness of some portion of the loan after that. But what that does for a school district like us, 10 years is a third of an entire teaching career, essentially. And the fact that these people have to pay this stuff back in down the road, rather than when I was in I got my loans forgiven from half each year from year one, something like that. And we need to find a way to address this issue, I think federally. I don't think it's a state issue. And anybody who has any thoughts could let somebody on the legislative committee know. We'll also talk to our legislators, our national legislators, on this issue. But it is indirectly education, but it cripples our ability to continue to attract the great staff that we have.
Thanks, David. Anybody else? Okay, questions, comments? Okay. Let's move on to 9.2 then, which is a continuation of our jam-packed dinner session agenda, which we have lots of topics. Can we go ahead and talk about the topic of community schools? I believe Dr. Smizer had some answers to that, because this was brought up by one of our board members.
Actually, it's kind of a, rather than an answer, it's a proposal. Who asked the question again? Yeah. What I was thinking about was just to bring an information item or a discussion item, whatever kind of item you prefer, to a future board meeting, and it doesn't have to be a long time from now. It's not hard for us to prepare, to describe the current state, because we have, the district has made some decisions in the past about sort of a quasi-community school, like a regional. We have some schools that are in a region that we almost treat like a, so I felt like, rather than say, why don't we do this method, why don't I show you what, in a little bit more detail, what we are doing now with our community partners to support wraparound services for schools, just sort of the status as it is now, to start the conversation.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I didn't want to presume we were going to do an agenda item, but if you want to propose that, that's fine. My interest definitely is around the question of partnerships and what are we doing with these wraparound services, and what are we doing in the schools versus referring people outside the schools, those kind of things, and how does that at some level compare with what other school districts are able to do. And you know, that's not always, I guess, the yardstick we need to use, but some of the concerns I've heard, some of the reasons, some of the discussion I've been privy to in the past around this has said, well, we can't do this, right? Or we can't do some particular aspect of this, and yet some other school districts are, and so it's hard to reconcile those things, and so that's the nature of the conversation I wanted to.
Great.
And so learning about it is the basis for having that conversation, so that's great.
Okay.
Great, thank you. We also had a topic about, a board member wanted to know about Wellington Water and the impact on PSD schools in that area. And would you like to clarify on that topic at all, Carolyn?
So I'm kind of thinking ahead to when we build the new middle school, high school. And I know that we have an adjudicated well on the property that we're proposing to purchase that we'll be using for irrigation. But I wonder if we really understand Wellington's ability to provide drinking water to the school. And I know that there was an article in the paper, and there was some things on the news this week about some of the issues that they were having with their water, which were mostly kind of aesthetic issues, which were the smell. The water wasn't unsafe at all to drink, and I think even some of the testing that they did on it, even with second parties, showed the water was safe to drink, but it's very hard water, and during the summer they're prone to algae blooms because they do get some of their drinking water, some of it comes from wells, and some of it comes from a really shallow irrigation reservoir, and therein the problem lies with the algae blooms if they're not controlled. So I'm wondering if they keep that same source of water, will we have to do any types of mitigation in the school, maybe with some filtering or reduction in hardness.
Okay, well, thanks for asking those questions, and I was fortunate enough today to speak with the town manager in Wellington about those issues, which was really good timing for this discussion. And he was very forthright, I think, in his proactive approach, I think, to dealing with the issues as they came out in the local paper. And I've looked on their website, and I've also, they have a newsletter that went out in August. Their website have all addressed that, and even their meeting tonight, their Board of Trustees is meeting tonight, and water is a topic of their agenda. So they're very aware of the concerns. And I think with Mr. Cannon, he's taken a very proactive approach, first of all, in treating the reservoir. And I probably learned more about that than I could have imagined, everything that you stated with the algae blooms and how you chemically treat it with copper sulfate in a product called alum. And with the increase in temperatures early this summer, they saw that bloom. And so that's one of their immediate concerns. And then second is as the population grows, obviously the ability to treat, right now they can treat 2 million gallons a day, and they need to double that capacity to about 4 million gallons per day. Very conscious of taste and odor with different filtration systems. And he comes from a smaller area in Indiana or in Illinois, I guess, and he's really taken, I think, a good set of eyes to this problem. And so that's the second part. And then fourth is they have to come up, I guess, with their population approaching 10,000, what's called it's a water efficiency process plan. I think it has to be filed with the state, and it talks about conservation measures, way they mitigate overuse, if you will. So that's another part of his plan. And the other one, as you indicated, what are the additional water sources? And they have another well that does not feed into the filtration plant, but it is an augmentation to the water system that they currently have. So that one, as they look, whether it's Colorado Big Thompson, Elko Water, City of Fort Collins Water, they are actively trying to pursue other water sources, to your point. So they are very excited, obviously, of having us, Poudre School District, up in Wellington. He says it's energized a lot of the community, and they're very aware that they are instrumental in providing the water to the site. And as you mentioned, an adjudicated well for irrigation will help offset irrigation needs, but depending on historical use of the other high schools, if we need, say, 1 million gallons of water or less per year, that's what they'll be looking at. So we'll see where they go with that. But I think he's got a very good proactive approach, and he stressed that. And I felt confident in at least what he said. And right now it looks like a 2 to 3 year outbuild for the treatment facility if they could. They're looking at another water source within a year, hopefully, and trying to get that equalization or that environmental plan together in about a year also. So I think he's laid it out there, and with our timing, we may be kind of coming together with the development of the property and the water. So that's just what he told me.
And I know, Carolyn, you had another topic that you wanted to broach at the dinner session.
I had another question in regards to training when we send teachers or staff to other states or other districts to learn about different methods of teaching and best practices. And specifically, if we're sending 10 or 12 people to another state to dig into another kind of teaching method, and we do that 2 or 3 years in a row, and then how do we assure that what we're learning there is translated into something tangible for the district? How do we know we just don't send people out there and we all feel good and that was really great to listen and hear about that, and then nothing happens? I mean, so how do we make sure that when those dollars are being invested, that something tangible is happening?
Well, it's a challenge, I will tell you. First, on the front end, we're expecting our managers, when they approve those types of trips, to be thoughtful about who's going and why they're going. So there should be a clear reason why they're going, particularly if they are traveling to a location to see a specific thing. It's a little different than, for example, going to a conference where you learn a lot of different things that maybe you didn't even know you were interested in until you were there. So it's a broad-based approach. But when we actually take a targeted trip, we should have outcomes that we are expecting to take back, and we should have debriefing afterward, and then serious conversations about what do we learn and what is our next steps. So I don't know how long it's been since the district has had a conversation about those expectations. It's something that we should do on a regular basis, and it's probably overdue, I would say. And I'm not aware that we've done it in the last 4 years. One of the questions I've heard is, we invest this money in we consider that a form of professional development as well as programmatic development with people, and then sometimes they leave for various reasons. So we've spent the money on somebody who now isn't even in the district anymore. I think that's the nature of professional development in general, is that that's kind of just the way it is. I don't think we can do much about that. We can't send someone to an amazing experience and make them swear they won't leave the district for 3 years or something. It just, life doesn't work that way. So I would say that we have room to grow, and I see some head nods over there. I don't see any objection to the fact that we could tighten that up. What we're doing now centrally as we launch into exploring post-secondary workforce readiness, all of those, have been several trips already. And we have, as we've heard about some of the most notable changes that some high schools are doing around the country, we already have probably more recommendations of who we absolutely need to go see than we could ever do. So we'll have to make some good choices about who goes and how many people go. But that's directly related to the work that we are doing now. So if we're doing something like that, we're doing that, bringing the principal of the high school, bringing this leadership staff so that they can, with the purpose of learning so that they can implement.
And I guess that the follow-on question would be, do we have the support network there, or are we encouraging people when they come back from these kinds of great trips where they're learning about out-of-the-box thinking and out-of-the-box methods? So when they come back, do we have the support or the culture behind them to encourage them to implement those new methods? I guess I'm afraid that we get people who come back and maybe are discouraged and nothing happens with the stuff they've learned, and so I'm concerned that's why they leave. That's why they don't stay, is because they get discouraged. And so how do we make sure that when people want to implement new things that they feel encouraged and supported? And are we doing that, I guess, is kind of the question.
Well, I would say probably it depends on who's going and where. If it's a group of people who are going, then my assumption I'm making is they already are a team that are working on something. So in my opinion, that's the best kind of visiting, is we're all already a defined team with a defined thing we're working on, and so we're going to go learn and come back and make that part of our planning process, which is fundamentally different than an individual person who says, oh, I heard that was interesting, goes to see it and has no team, no authority, no plan to be able to implement anything like that. So I guess it depends on what the idea is, why the person went in the first place. If it's something, for example, if I'm an individual teacher, I'm going to something that directly is in my area of teaching, I have the total ability to implement what I see, because it's my classroom. I can teach it however I want. Then the expectation would be, show me what you learned, tell me about it later. As the principal, I would want to know, so what did you try? Did you try anything? How did it work? Where if you're going to see something that a whole team of people created, but you're not bringing a team, you're just yourself, you may or may not be able to implement that thing when you get back to your building, because maybe that's not what your building's doing right now. So I think we could have some good conversations with our leadership about what's our strategy about trips, what's our strategy about when people come back from trips. We certainly don't want, first we don't want to be unwise with taxpayer dollars. on these types of expenses, but also on the inspiration of people. We don't want to be wasting people's time or sending them out to get inspired when we have no intention of doing anything with what they learned. So I hear what you're saying. I think we do it well and not so well, probably all over the district, and it's a good time to have that conversation.
Rob?
So, and related to that, it seems to me, to the extent that we're sending central staff to go and look at some of these things, and to the extent that we have a site-based management culture, I guess it's, well, so I'll ask it as a question. So how do we ensure that we actually get value for that in the schools, right? Because, you know, if principals or teachers or whatever departments have the option to say, well, that's very interesting, but, you know, I'm not so interested in that. How do we walk that balance in a way that ensures return on investment for those travel dollars? And yeah.
I think I would have to say over the last year or two, I've seen less of that waste, what you would say a waste of effort maybe, because I do think that our partnership with our principals in the schools is becoming tighter and tighter each year. And so I'm not aware, you probably are, but I'm not aware of significant trips that were taken that did not already have leadership from the buildings on the trip too. They were part of the team that went. So I think that's been our pattern. Do you guys want to add anything?
Well, I think that's a big part of us traveling. I think when I travel, it's going to be with leadership, and it's going to be to help foster the conversations, and I think we're doing learning right alongside the principals. I think when you look at research, it's important for the principal to do development alongside their teachers. That supports the growth teachers are making. In some cases, it's the same for us. As we look at the development our leaders are making, there are times it's important for us to do some of the learning right alongside them. I think it's also important to recognize that when we go look at some of the out-of-the-box things we're looking at, those schools or districts might be 4 or 5 years down the road. And so for us to come back, understand where they are, and help support those decisions and that implementation along the way is a critical piece. Recognizing that each site might move forward, implement different pieces or parts at different rates. I think that's a piece of what we do. And as we look forward to the work we're doing at the high school level right now, a piece that we ought to be doing, and then looking at what effect it's having in our high schools is a critical conversation, and one we need to continue to push forward, so that we're not going looking at cool things and staying static here. That's the critical component, but that's hard to do if we send people out, they see cool things, and we're not in the loop. It's hard for us to have the conversations and push as well, because we might not exactly know what they saw. So I think it's a critical part for support and almost accountability, really, for the change we're looking to make.
Anybody else want to talk on that particular topic? Okay, so then the next thing I have is really more of a homework assignment, maybe. We are changing the format of our student groups that give input to the board. And so my question is for the board to consider if there are specific topics that the board would like the student groups or student group, I'm not sure if we're going to end up with one or more this year, to consider this year to give feedback to the board. And if you have something now, that's fine, but otherwise I'll just bring it back to the dinner session on August 22nd and let people have input. But it looks like Christoph has something.
I can't remember which of the board members sat with Mr. Nielsen, but maybe we could get a rundown of what the changes were to the think tank, and so I could get a reminder of how we were going to do this next.
Scott, can you do that for us?
I certainly can. The changes for this year will be that we will begin, at least out the beginning of the year, with a group cross-representing lots of different subgroups at Rocky Mountain High School, a teacher and principal that will be working with that subgroup, around kind of a principals advisory as well as feedback to the board and a board visiting. Where we left it in the spring was to work as a board to figure out how do you want to interact, who would like to interact with the board. And as you give topics, at least out right away, Craig's already asked me what the board is interested in as they put together the list of students they're listed with the group as they set the group up. But topics, if you have some tonight, would be fantastic.
So it'll be it'll be a club. It won't be out of a class, a government class or anything, right?
Right.
Okay.
It'll be different than a class.
Rob?
So I don't have this fully formed into some nice phraseology or package or something, but I think one of the things I'd be interested in hearing from high school students about is their view of the distribution requirements in our graduation requirements, right? One of the things we've been talking about over the past year or so is this question about, you know, our 240 credits thing and how many things have to go into English and how many things have to go into math and whatever. Is that distribution meeting their needs? If so, or if not, why not? You know, some question around that. Since you wanted something tonight, that strikes me as an
Yeah.
important thing that we've talked about.
That's a great one to get some student voice into.
Christoph?
And I'm going to forget the proper terms, but along those lines, if I understand correctly, we're implementing in all the high schools something about how they meter out their curriculums to match up with careers and whatnot. And I think there could still be a perception amongst us that there's a different perception between adults and students as to how well that's going. So any input that they might have on how it's going at Rocky and how that's being implemented would be really nice for me. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think
Okay.
so. I think we can take that. We'll craft it a little bit to figure out how they're connecting to kind of future, and are adults looking at the same as kids are.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts for, Rob?
Well,
You had, I said other, and, okay, Chris. I think you're it.
okay. So the other thing that strikes me that we're doing new, or we're going to be doing new here, is this idea of capstone projects. And I think it would be interesting to get student feedback on how they think that's going. It may be premature to do this year, and it may be a small subset of students who do that. So I don't know that this mechanism will really work to accomplish that kind of feedback. I don't know, but it's something to think about going forward. I guess I would like to get, over time, some sense of how students are feeling that's going.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for us to do that with this group, but I think largely across the system, student voice should be a part of how that process is rolling out. If we're going to get to a place different than we were before, student voice can be pretty important.
Other thoughts tonight? Or, I think we can bring this back on the 22nd still, because I don't want to just toss it out there and not have somebody's thoughts considered. Does anybody have anything else for tonight? Okay, well, we have a good start with 3 topics, so let's just sort of take that as a homework. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Smizer. No, I'm not done with that wasn't not done with the whole thing, but for this topic, we have 3 starter topics. We'll bring it back on the 22nd at the dinner session. If anybody has anything to add or anything, we can talk about it then. So, Dr. Smizer, another topic.
Just a quick update. I thought we've had a new plan that we thought would be wonderful, and it's turning out to be wonderful, so I thought we'd brag a little bit for the moment. The Principal Advisory Group. So I think the assistant soups might want to tell you about this idea, and it's already being implemented and how well it's going.
I guess I've been tapped to talk again. We set forth a year ago to connect more closely, I guess, with the principals. And so we have set up a group. We're calling it the Principal Advisory Group. We don't have a better term than that. It is made up of 2 principals from each feeder system, 1 elementary and 1 secondary. And then we have 1 principal that represents the schools that don't have a feeder. And we met with that group in June to kind of set some ground rules. The idea being for us to have a better sense of what's going on out in the buildings, what are some of the needs and concerns. We decided at that point that we would have 6 meetings a year, one before school, one after school lets out, and then one quarterly. We had our first active meeting last week, and prior to that, we set up a mechanism for agenda items to be put in the hopper, if you will, so we knew what we were talking about as we walked in. We walked into the meeting last week and had an agenda set. There was one topic that principals felt like they needed to address. We started with that. We worked through the other 4 or 5 agenda items that we were able to get through in the 2 hours. Made some decisions coming out of it. We're able to bring back an idea principals had last week and go back to them today with a fix, probably an iteration that makes the system better for the principals, and some other agenda items that we're going to come back. We agreed as a team to meet again next week because we didn't get through all the agenda items. So we're already on our 7th meeting of the year. I suspect as we get it running, we'll meet more often than we will in future years. But from our end, as we went through the meeting, it was very positive. We heard very positive impact from the principals as well, and we look forward to continuing to do and build that partnership with buildings.
It's a follow-on to conversations we started about central office versus schools. Are we a district of schools or are we a school district? It's sort of it's grown out of that conversation. Is how do we make decisions? How do we problem solve in collaboration with each other? And principals were pretty jazzed. I had a bunch of people just walk up to me today saying this is a game changer. So they're really excited. Already solved some problems. Just made some decisions. Done. So they're really excited and enthused, sensing a real better partnership with central office on their behalf to solve their problems.
Okay, great. I think the only other thing I have is just to remind everybody that we have an informal board lunch this Thursday at 11:30, so hopefully y'all be able to come. And that brings us, if there's nothing else on the dinner session topic. Okay, let's move on to 10.0, which is agenda planning. So tonight I heard that we're going to do a future topic of basically what is our baseline in PSD regarding community schools? Where are we now, so that we can see if, with partnerships and so forth and wraparound services. So we will bring that back with the approval of does everybody agree that's an okay thing to bring back? Another thing we talked about was just bringing back to the dinner session the 3, any topics that we would like student input on this year. And I think lastly, we did have a request from a community member to do a resolution on for the Colorado Education Network. And so I guess I would like to know from the board, is there interest in bringing that back for discussion or approval on a future agenda? Yes?
I think
Go ahead, Rob.
so conceptually, yes. I haven't read exactly what's here. I'd want to look a little bit more into it, but I think we at least owe DJ the courtesy of having a discussion about it. So yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. Everybody good? Okay, well, you have a copy of it, so we will bring it back on a future agenda, probably the next one. And then we can, at that time, if people want to make changes to it, you can obviously think about that or send something in prior to that. Okay. Anything else for agenda planning? Does anybody have any other topics that you want to make sure that we get to? Other than what we've already got scheduled, which is quite a lot. Okay. Believe it or not, that brings us to 11.0, which is adjournment at the record time of 7:49 p.m. How did that happen? Well, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you for coming and joining us this evening.